The Big 12, in my opinion, in terms of just size and history, I think is the most accomplished conference in college basketball. And last year, they were so close with one of their new additions in Houston. But it all just goes to show how the Big 12 is always going to be right up there for college basketball production and talent across America. And this year is going to be no different, especially when the names they have coming in are going to be on Big 12 stages, and the stages are never going to be bigger. The lights are never going to be brighter than the Big 12, and it's going to be great, and I'm definitely here for the ride. So let's go on ahead and dive into the Big 12 college basketball rankings. First is going to be the conference contenders, teams that I think should be favored and are absolutely in the range to be favored to win their conference. Starting with number one, who I have as the number one team. If you watched me last year, should be obvious. I have the Houston Cougars as the number one team in the Big 12. Houston was my darling last year. Not in the case of like that they're this hidden gem, but they were the one I believed in last year. They were my main title pick. And trust me, I mean, all 4 1 seeds absolutely could have made it. There were some other 2 seeds people loved, so it wasn't this obvious pick, and Houston was not the favorite pick at all. But it was so close. I mean, as close as you could have come, only rivaling like UNC losing at the buzzer in their title game was how close Houston was to winning it all. And while on paper, there should be more caution this year, and kind of more caution than maybe Houston would probably like, I have full faith that Kelvin Sampson will get the new additions to this team to buy in and fight and fit right in. Last season was a season where if any of the 1 seeds were in a year that was not 2025, aside from some very slight outlier seasons in the past, they probably would have won it all for all 4 of these teams. And for Houston, I just totally feel for them, especially with the Final Four being in Houston last year. To lose like that, just so unfortunate. They lost some guys too. LJ Cryer being their leading scorer. Juwan Roberts, a starter that's gone. Terrence Arsenault was a key guy off the bench. But the guys replacing them are very young, but very talented freshmen. And the ceiling for this team could be even higher, which already sounds insane that the ceiling could be higher. But it's possible because the ceiling that's higher is literally winning the title game instead of losing in the title game. They have three top 20 freshmen coming in. Chris Sinak Jr. being the best one, who is a 6'10 big with a 7'3" wingspan who can put the ball on the floor. How he will be right away, I think, remains to be seen, but this dude has absolutely insane potential. Kingston Flemings is a top-tier point guard, explosive playmaker. Isaiah Harwell is a 6'6 guard/forward who's very much a Houston-type defender. All of these guys will and need to play a role and be good in their role. So early in the year, if Houston isn't as dominant as they are maybe later, that's probably why. And I'd like to remind you of Houston's record at the beginning of the year. They had 3 losses in this kind of beginning year last year, and they go on to lose, 1 or 2 more games the rest of the season. I think it was literally 1 more game the rest of the year. So if Houston isn't as up to snuff as you would have expected in the beginning of the year, don't panic, because they're putting in a lot of effort to get these new freshmen in here, and they are very, very talented guys. But basically, everyone else is a returner. Everyone else. They're 3, with 3 of them, I think, being 3 of their 4 best players from last year. So LJ Cryer being kind of the only guy of the 4 best guys last year that's not returning. JoJo Tugler, not a scorer, but an amazing defender as a forward. The 2 big ones are going to be Milos Uzan and Emmanuel Sharp offensively. I don't know how they returned both these guys. It was insane. I believe, I can't remember if it was Uzan or Sharp. They were like going to go to the NBA or transfer, or maybe both of them. And then they back out of each of their respective decisions and they come back to Houston, which just amazing return for them. But that is their downside, is the freshmen must really deliver, because it's on the bench is just kind of on the lower end for guys who have not really been here who can maybe improve. Most notably Mercy Miller at guard. kind of something that, he can't really fully replace LJ Cryer at shooting guard. And that's kind of the concern there. The plan to replace that is that these freshman forwards can work out. But it's definitely a risk. Absolutely. But the one I think, with the mix of the three main returners and the three freshmen, all at different positions, if they planned it out really well, and if it all comes together for them, they all kind of find their footing once March rolls around. This is a team that can win it all. Absolutely. 100%. And I think while the biggest concern again is just losing that extra shooting that LJ Cryer had and not fully replacing it, that's the biggest thing for me. And then the freshmen, but if they can get that, they're absolutely a tournament caliber team in terms of being able to win it all. Number 2 for me is BYU. I have them as a 2 to 3 seed, but they are number 2 for me in the Big 12. This is the new juggernaut for the Big 12 in the NIL era, and it's starting right now. BYU had a relatively normal transfer group of players. It was good, keeping kind of 2 starters, some from the bench. The new guys they got in total, as a whole with freshmen plus transfers, is great. They keep their leading scorer in Richie Saunders. Great start. He's been there all 4 years. He's a great, amazing offensive efficiency dude. Very much a pure scorer, though, not a defender. Kei Bakita is, I think, a desperately needed traditional big for them. Does all the little things. Does all the things that a big man needs to do at a high level. Dawson Baker is a good bench guard that they have. But they added the number 1 player in the country in AJ Dubnsa. Now, if he's going to be the number 1 pick remains to be seen, but he is in that kind of top 3 tier of guys that we look at for 5 stars this year, and I think he's going to be no less than the 2nd or 3rd pick in the draft, and he's ready right now. So this is like his impact is probably going to be somewhere in between like what Dylan Harper was for Rutgers last year, which was a great player, and what Cooper Flagg was as a freshman last year, which was one of the best freshmen we've ever seen. I think he's somewhere in between that range. His impact, it could be insane. He is a 6'9", 7-foot wingspan, jump shooting, defending, everything. Like, he's literally an insane stud. Xavier Stanton is a 6'11", 207-pound hybrid center who's a 4-star too, who I think is going to play a big bench role as well. So they got other freshmen there too. And they also got some transfers, but the big one was sophomore Rob Wright, the 3rd from Baylor, who was a little raw offensively, but great as a playmaker and is expecting very big jump from his freshman year to now his sophomore year at BYU. Kennard Davis is kind of a good high-floor bench guy from Southern Illinois who averaged 16 points per game. So they got a great mix of key returners, very high-ranked freshmen, and a top 10 transfer in Rob Wright. The size is much improved for this team. I think the defense was a gigantic issue last year, and it's definitely going to be improved this year. The potential for this team is huge. But they could also, with the expecting freshmen, sophomore jumps, maybe those don't come. It could not be as high as maybe I have. Or maybe they're kind of in the overall rankings, they are kind of higher, but maybe another Big 12 team kind of jumps up here and maybe takes their spot at number 2. But I just really like their mix for the offseason they had. I'm kind of buying the hype, to be honest. I definitely am a little bit as they try to make the Final Four for the first time ever. BYU never made the Final Four ever. They're trying to make the Elite Eight for the first time in 45 years. And they're trying to get to back-to-back Sweet 16s for the first time ever. So this could literally be the beginning of an era. It's not hyperbole and probably correct to say this is the beginning of an era in BYU where we're living in probably the best stretch of BYU basketball ever. And the NIL was only going to help them with the ability they kind of have to fund players going to BYU. But I think at the end of the day, you could have all these guys you want, but you got to prove it. And that still remains to be seen. But I am kind of buying in on, I do think BYU is probably going to prove it this year. That's why I have them number 2, and I have them a 2 or 3 seed in the tournament. And then I do still have another team in this conference contending range of guys teams that I still think are very much viable to win the conference, and that's Texas Tech. I have them as a projected 3 seed, and this is kind of the team I'm referencing that could be before BYU. And at the beginning of the year, I think that definitely looks like that's who they are. I really loved this team last year. I had them, so I normally do 2 brackets. I think 2 brackets is, everyone should be able to claim 2 brackets. I think having 1 bracket, yeah, that's good. Having 3 is too many. I just think the in-between, there's just so much variance. Having 2 brackets just fits perfectly to be able to say, hey, I picked this. Because you can walk into a guy and he can say, oh, I picked all this stuff, and it's like his 15th bracket. And it's like, okay, buddy. But if you have 2 that you really stick to, I think that's kind of is the limit for you to be able to say, oh, yeah, okay, I know what I'm talking about when I do this. And while one of my brackets, my main one, obviously had all the Final Four teams being, 1 seeds, the only one that wasn't was I did have all 3 1 seeds, except I had Texas Tech as my Final Four team instead of Florida in their region. And, man, they almost did it. Walter Clayton and Thomas Howe really saved Florida, but Texas Tech was right there. Now they returned 2 huge pieces, the biggest one being a guy who will probably be a first-team All-American, to be honest, in JT Toppin. He is an absolute monster. He is a 6'9" offensive mismatch beast. But also big things are going to be expected from a guy who was one of the best freshmen last year in Christian Anderson. They also have really good transfers coming in, like LeJean Watts from Washington State. Huge addition, very much needed. But Chris Anderson, I think, has gigantic expectations as a two-way guard, and I think he's definitely going to deliver, at least from what we saw of him in this kind of recent freshman season. In terms of the other guys, I think they're going to try and fill Darian Williams' role. Obviously, he goes to NC State with him not having all of the attention. I think, he can kind of do that offensively. LeJean Watts can. In terms of filling the Darian Williams role, although he's a little bit of a different type of player. He's not as big as Darian Williams was. And he's kind of more of a guard/forward than a big forward, if you know what I mean. But still, that top 3 I really like. Other transfers are kind of more specialist. Luke Bamgoybe, maybe I pronounced that wrong. I apologize. From VCU, very strictly defense, but definitely good for them. And he is a sophomore, so maybe that's freshman-sophomore jump we like. Tyree Bryant from Santa Clara is a big wing and all offense, played really good in big matchups as well. The depth, though, is kind of my concern. They have Josiah Mosley, who was a freshman at Villanova. He had some stuff as a former 4-star that looked pretty good, but wasn't amazing overall with his season. Jalen Petty from Washington. He was the Washington Player of the Year in high school, actually. So not from Washington University, but from Washington State. He's kind of the only notable freshman, so maybe he performs really well, kind of like Christian Anderson did. So the depth is a concern. But JT Toppin, Christian Anderson, LeJean Watts, I think being the main 3, and if their transfers that they got can fill their roles with Jalen Petty being a really good explosive freshman, it can be a great team who can absolutely contend in the Big 12, and that's why even if I do have them 3, I still think, and as a 3 seed, I still think they're definitely contenders for the conference here. Next is going to be tournament teams. I think these teams are going to be in the tournament. I don't think they necessarily are straight contenders for their conference, but they're absolutely tournament teams, and they're pretty high tournament teams at that. Number 4 for me being Iowa State. They are just 100% going to be good. There's literally no doubt about it. They're going to be a good team. I can't put them much higher than this at number 4. This is probably their peak, but it's TJ Otzelberger and over 50% of returning minutes, which is the most in the country and definitely a recipe for success for this team. Tamim Lipsey, Milan Momcilovic, Joshua Jefferson, all double-digit scorers. They also get Nathan Heisey off the bench returning, so 4 really big returning scorers for them. In terms of where these points are, I mean, it's 39 points per game from 3 players, kind of the main 3 we mentioned. So all the returners, I think, are going to have to take on a little bit more because the scoring in general, they did lose a good amount of players. Especially Momcilovic is going to need to take more of a step because he's more of a primary offensive player in general. They have kind of two bench/swap starters in transfers: Blake Buchanan from Virginia, who's a fine big man, and then Dominique Nelson, who had averaged 14 points per game at Utah Valley. We'll see kind of what his impact is. The scoring and shooting like last year is obviously kind of the concern for them, especially now if one of like Lipsy or Momcilovic is hurt, which happened last year. And they had a stretch where they lost like 3 of 4 games and had an offensive rating below 115, which, is kind of the average for like high major schools in college basketball. So having a rating below that, pretty bad, not ideal. But the defense is projected to be the second best defense in the entire country, and that's why they're here, because TJ Otzelberger teams are going to be insane defensively. All these guys are very good defensively, but Bart Torvik and KenPom, both good advanced sites, have them as the number 2 defense in the country. So if you've got a top 2 defense, guess what? You're going to be a good team, and teams are going to absolutely despise playing against you. Yes, playing against you. So Iowa State Cyclones definitely still going to be up there. They're not going away at all. And then number 5, a team that I had initially at like 6, sometimes even 7, and then I also had them maybe potentially a little bit higher, but I am kind of settling in this, lower range here. Not lower range, this kind of middle range here, and that's KU. I have KU at number 5. I think this is a team that is like a 4, 5, or 6 seed. Could be anywhere from there. I think Iowa State is like a 4 or 5 seed, so a little bit of a kind of similar ceiling. Maybe Kansas actually could be a 3 seed, so I think Kansas actually has a higher ceiling. They could be anywhere from a 3 to a 6 seed, but Iowa State probably going to be a 4 or 5. But I've got Kansas at number 5, and at least in the Big 12. And man, it has been a time to forget the past 2 years for KU fans. The new NIL and transfer portal era has not really worked out for KU, even when they've really leaned into it, like the past few years. Dickinson was the worst superstar to have. Clearly not bad, but not a centerpiece for a winning team. They built the team terribly, to be honest. A very big lack of shooting is what they have had recently. They won a round 1 game in 2024 with Samford, who they even got lucky to win that game. With them losing in the first round this past year to Arkansas, they are one lucky Samford round 1 win away from being a first round exit team 2 years in a row. KU basketball being that. And in terms of this year, I don't know what exactly they're going to be. It's very high variance. But what KU is used to in their history, this has obviously been an unacceptable, stretch of seasons for Kansas. I don't think it'll be the year that it was last year, where they were the worst seed since 2000, and they were in the worst Big 12 spot ever, being 6th. But while 5th, was only one spot higher than that, I just think that goes to show the strength of the top of the Big 12. I think fans are going to, even if it's not the KU we expect being 1 or 2 seeds, going to like this team way more than they liked the past few teams, especially last year, but even 2024, even if they have a relatively similar, maybe a tiny bit better record. And that is going to be because of their big claim to fame being Darren Peterson. And make no mistake about it, he is the real deal. Absolutely. He is the number 2 ranked prospect, clearly viewed as a top 3 pick, potential to have more impact than Andrew Wiggins. I mean, Bill Self is raving about this dude. He looks insane. He's a versatile combo guard who can effortlessly score. I think he's going to give KU fans something to actually enjoy. So you're really going to actually love your best player now. So you should be really excited for that. The biggest question is whether the guys they have around him will be enough to Kansas standards. They got 3 other main transfers that will play. Trey White from Illinois, I think, is going to be the best one. He averaged 10.5 points, 5.5 rebounds for Illinois as a big offensive wing. I think he can be a good number 2 and average close to like 14 points per game. They also have Melvin Council Jr. from St. Bonaventure, and he's a good defensive playmaking combo guard. Might transition to more of a point guard role depending on how they use Darren Peterson, but Melvin Council I think is going to be good. And then Jaden Dawson from Loyola Chicago, probably going to be leaned on as more of a bench guy, but not a bad group of transfers here. Nothing crazy, but a real solid group. The big breakout is going to have to be Floyd Badunga, who is kind of the easiest breakout candidate, to be honest, in all of college basketball. He's really going to have to be that classic KU big. I don't really know how good offensively he's going to be, but defensively and rebounding, I think it's going to be amazing, and it should be very big for him. And the offense might just be able to come with Darren Peterson and all these other guys kind of, being able to potentially just get him the ball inside and just let him dunk it. That might just be the extent of what his offense is, but could be very dominant there. Elmarco Jackson is a guard who had a medical redshirt season last year. In 2024, he was not great in his freshman year, but has a lot of potential. I think he's really going to have to provide off the bench, so that is a little bit of a, expectation and projection is Marco Jackson being healthy and producing. And the rest of the freshmen, they do have a heavy intake of freshmen here for the bench, which I think after kind of failing on the all transfer route might really be needed for them just to help get more guys to build from within inside the team. They have 3 other 4-stars, guard Cole Rosario, Sames Calderon from Overtime Elite, and then a foreign big man in Paul Mambia. But I don't really know how ready all these guys are. Cole is probably the most ready to start, but I'm not 100% sure. But either way, they don't really need these guys to start. They've had a lot of Cole is going to be very similar to, that kind of Grady Dick, the guy they had a few years ago who's on the Pistons now. I forget his name off the top of my head, but just a lot of these like long, lanky freshmen that kind of play on the bench for KU, probably going to be in that role, which is definitely something they need. They didn't really have that last year. So it's not a bad team. But if Darren Peterson is hurt at all or not on his game at all, I think the odds are definitely against them on a lot of really big matchups. They just need some sort of, I think, unexpected improvement from a few guys, which I think a lot of them probably will come. And they need some of these freshmen to have really good freshman years for them to be anything higher than a tournament team, but a good tournament team at this point. But with it being KU, that's absolutely possible. I could absolutely see that with Bill Self, obviously being one of the greatest coaches of all time. And for them to have the view of the season, could completely change just depending on how they are come March. I mean, they could go into this as high as a 4 seed, and then obviously maybe something happens with Peterson or whatever, and then they go down. They could come into the season stumbling as a 6 seed, and then they just hit on all cylinders and bang, they go on ahead and kill it in March. So the regular season, it's varying, but I honestly don't think it matters because KU has just experienced 2 of the worst regular season back-to-back regular seasons that they've ever had. If this regular season is somewhere in between that or a little bit better, it's really going to matter in March because they've seen nothing for 2 years in March. And they easily could have seen 2 first-round exits. So I think the biggest thing is going to be come March what they look like. But obviously during the regular season, it's kind of a slightly solid indicator of what the team can be come March. And I do think it's definitely going to be on the upward for KU. Maybe not as high as they're used to, but at least you got a player that you can really hang your hat on and say, wow, we are witnessing one of the greatest KU freshmen of all time. That's how good I think Darren Peterson can be. Number 6 for me is going to be Arizona. Also very varying, very much a high variance team. I keep saying very much a high varying team. These all around. Tommy Lloyd, some other big name coaches we've seen, has kind of shielded away from the transfer portal this year and is reloaded with a ton of freshmen. I mean, a ton, which is why Arizona is the most volatile team in the Big 12. Absolutely. They move on from a lot, most notably Caleb Love, who they kind of lived and died by. They did have success, just not top-tier success. They have seven incoming freshmen, which is insane. 2 5-star top 10 guys. They have 3 4-stars, and 2 of them being from overseas. And they have a high 3-star guy in, I don't know if you know him, Bryce James, who's the son of LeBron James. The two 5-stars are Koi Pete and Braden Burrius. Koi is 6'8", 235, very broad and very mature. Basically a football player playing basketball. Braden is a kind of big-bodied scoring guard who's also a 3-level threat. They have other guys, Dwayne Aratode, who's a high, 4-star big, amazing defensively, very good versatile wing. Ivan Karshenkov, who's a 6'7" German who's been playing pro overseas since he was 15 years old. This freshman class is insane. It's literally insane. That's what you need to know. And will it be – I think it's going to be really interesting to look back on how it all panned out, maybe compared to other teams, maybe going in the portal a little bit more. But all these freshmen can't be the only guys on your team. So Arizona did still keep a good amount of talent. Jaden Bradley averaged 12 points per game last year as a senior guard. Great at getting to the line and a two-way combo guard, really like as a starter. Anthony Del Orso is a very good spot-up shooter as a kind of big 2 or like a smaller 3. Toby Awaka, really efficient offensive big man. They have a 7-footer in Mateus Krivas, who's more of a backup and didn't really play a ton after an injury last year, but might be able to show kind of what he is and might actually get some starts this year. But they're insanely young. They have insane size, and they could be anywhere from a damn 2 seed to like a 7 or 8 seed, to be honest. I think we'll just kind of have to wait and see how all the freshmen do. I'm going to go somewhere in the middle, so I have them as like a 5-6 seed and 6th in the Big 12, but very intriguing team to watch. And if they can keep some of these guys, at least a good amount of them for the next 2-3 years, maybe Arizona found some studs here and might be able to have at least a year in there where they're a top-tier title contender, and I'm sure that's what Tommy Lloyd and Arizona want there. Next is going to be teams that are kind of on the edge. They're in the tournament for me, but they're on the edge here, and it's only 2 teams, and that's because I think there's a clear top 8 in the Big 12. And the first team on here is going to be Baylor. I have Baylor kind of on the edge here. I do have them in that 7, 8, 9 seed range, and I have them 7th in the Big 12. Baylor just hasn't found a way to get back to what they were 4 years ago. But it's really hard to do that, obviously. And it seems like it was just a perfect culmination of everything for that team the year they won it all. But I think they should obviously still make March again. And if you're in, then hey, anything can happen after that. But this is a brand new team, 0 returning minutes. So very interesting there. But they're projected to be like the same seed they were last year. They're going with a more of a deep approach rather than kind of major stars like last year they had with VJ Edgecombe. Although they still kind of dipped their hands in the recruiting pool. They got a 5-star in Tonde Yesofu, lanky, strong, hybrid kind of small forward. The transfers are a ton of transfers, but there's kind of 4 main ones who all averaged double digits at their previous stop. 2 of them from high majors and 2 of them from mid majors. Michael Rataj, who's a senior 6'9" wing from Oregon State, who averaged almost 17 points a game and 7 rebounds. Dan Skillings Jr. is a hybrid guard/wing from Cincinnati. Kind of average offensively, but very good defensively. And then the 2 mid-major guys they added, Obi Abjim, he's a scoring guard from Wyoming, averaged almost 18 a game, shot 43% from 3. I think he's going to be really good. And J.J. White from Omaha, who's very similar to Obi, just a better playmaker and a bit of a worse scorer. So all 4 of those guys, I mean, again, which I have meaning to say this stat in a while, or I've been meaning to say this stat more, 1 in every 5 transfers normally don't work out, and I would say 2 in every 5 overachieve. So when I bring up all these transfers, they're not all guaranteed to do what they had to do at their past spot. I mean, we've seen a lot. KU last year, asked them, they had a lot of transfers that didn't pan out. Kansas State as well. Not picking on the state of Kansas, but off the top of my head, they had a lot of transfers that didn't really work out. So just because you get a lot of transfers, Indiana, they're in there. So just because you get a lot doesn't mean that it's guaranteed to do exactly what they did at their previous stop. But I don't know. All 4 of these guys, just to me, I feel like maybe they're not, going to be insane, but they all feel like they're going to be pretty good contributors. But they also bring in two bigs, Justin Bodo from High Point, who was a team that made the dance last year. He's a traditional lanky inside center. Caden Powell from Rice, who had a bit of a breakout year and is kind of more offensively sound than Bodo is, but Bodo is this like very great lanky, defender. Bigs are not a guarantee to be great for them with these two guys, but I kind of like their defensive presence, and I don't think they should really clog the paint because this Baylor team can definitely shoot. Cameron Carr is in here too, who was a 4-star from Tennessee, but in 2 years hasn't really been able to stay on the court or kind of get it going. Transfers here to Baylor might be able to help change that. And they also have another 4-star freshman in Andre Iguodala II. I don't expect too much with how deep they are for him to play, but still could be interesting. So maybe this is kind of the floor for Baylor because, one of these lower school transfers absolutely could break out. But either way, I think this kind of range I still really like, and this is still a good tournament team. It's just how sound defensively are they going to be? I think they'll be pretty good. And how good are some of these transfers going to be, even the ones that were from lower schools? I think they'll be pretty good. So this is a pretty good team. Nothing crazy, but definitely not one to push over at all, especially when you have Scott Drew at the helm there. And then number 8, the first team actually that did not make the tournament last year for the Big 12 on this list, and that is going to be Cincinnati. I have them as like an 8 or 9 seed. It's make or break for head coach Wes Miller, who was at UNC Greensboro previously, made the tournament twice there, and it's now year 5, and they've had 20-win seasons. Cincinnati has, which is good, but no March appearance at all. And it really feels like he's kind of on the way to be fired if he doesn't make it this year. So it is very much the definition of make or break. It's close, but I really think they can get in over the hump this year. They have a lot of returning transfers coming in. They do keep a key starter, and they have some freshmen that you can definitely keep an eye on that I think make you feel good about putting them in the tournament. Day Thomas is their main returner. He's nothing crazy as a point guard, but he's a good enough passer, three-point shooter that makes him a good starter. Then a lot of transfers. Mustafa Thiam, who's had a really good freshman year last year for center at UCF. Sincere Harris at West Virginia, not a scorer at all, but can get maybe a little bit exposed there offensively, but he might be one of the best on-ball guard defenders in the Big 12 this year. Baba Miller from FAU, former high recruit at Florida State. He's kind of steadily improved every single year, and I think he can make a solid comeback to the high majors. Kirk Krissa, who is basically the antithesis of Sincere Harris. He's literally just a straight shooter, but he's a really good one at that, spot-up shooter. He was at KU, but he did get hurt, and was at West Virginia before that, where he shot 42% from 3 on 6 attempts per game in 2024. Jalen Haynes from George Mason and Jalen Celestine from Baylor, both very similar kind of power forwards. They just look like their team, while they did lose a lot of their best players, and one of the main ones to St. John's, they look like they completely upgraded on every other position. And they also have 2 top 50 4-stars coming in, Sean Abev and Keyshawn Tillery. Sean, I think, is going to be really interesting. He's 6'8". He can score one-on-one. I think he will probably play, and he has looked good, actually, in some of the scrimmage games that have gone on. So keep an eye out for Sean. So they're pretty deep. They have a guy who can fill basically every single role, at least. Playmaking maybe is the one that's the weakest, but I think this is a very high floor, especially defensive team that I think that alone can kind of help them get into March for the first time since 2019. So normally you don't see these where the coach is on the hot seat and it's do or die. A lot of guys kind of go against that. I'm going kind of with it. I'm buying into Cincinnati this year. And I do think they are going to be a tournament team when we get to March this year. So those are the teams I think are definitely tournament teams. The next step is the bubbly teams. So that's my top 8 for Big 12, and I only have 8 Big 12 teams making the tournament. So I think these guys are just on the outside looking in, and I can easily see any of these kind of Big 12 teams make it. And I would say there's 4. There's like 4 Big 12 teams that are in this kind of bubble, could definitely make it range. And the order I have them in, starting at number 9, is going to be Oklahoma State. I think they'll probably be in like that next 4 out tier. This is a group that is like a ton of teams. Again, I think they can kind of be interchangeable in terms of bubble stuff right now. But this team is definitely, I think, the one where if I had to pick any of them to make it, it would be Oklahoma State. Kanye Clary is a 5'11 guard, was at Mississippi State last year but did get injured, was at Penn State before that and was pretty good. Vitorius Miller, a sophomore from LSU, looking to take that kind of second-year jump, wasn't bad last year. Isaiah Coleman was really solid from Seton Hall. But a big one to keep an eye on is going to be Anthony Roy from Green Bay. Anthony Roy averaged 25.7 points per game. He led the country in scoring, was amazing offensively last year, and also very efficient. Was at New Mexico before that with Richard Pitino. So if the Patinos like you, I'm thinking I'm going to agree with them as well. He's probably going to be pretty good if they like you. They have some other guys. This 22-year-old freshman from Greece, 6'9". He's been a champion over there. Could be something year one. It's a lot of potential stuff. And the defense and rebounding might not be super ideal, but they have some really low-key transfers that might be better than we think. And they probably are going to be better than they have in recent years, at least since, they were able to get Cade Cunningham to come to their school. But I do have them at 9 just on the outside. TCU I have at 10. TCU is here purely because I think Jamie Dixon is a good coach who raises the floors of teams. This team has changed a lot. But it's kind of intriguing. One of the most intriguing pieces they have the best JUCO recruit this year in Xavier Edmonds from Salt Lake Community College. Brock Harding is a good shooter and playmaker. He's a point guard from Iowa that's coming over. Jaden Pierre from Providence, baseline kind of combo guard. Caden Edwards is a 4-star freshman, top 50 guy. They have some pieces, and they'll be balanced. I just don't know if the top-tier talent is really enough. It all really depends on how good Xavier Edmonds is, which if he kind of shocks and breaks out, which is possible for some of these JUCO guys, it's happened in the past, then this could definitely be kind of maybe that they either take the 8 spot or maybe they are like that kind of 9 team that makes the tournament for the Big 12. 11, I have Kansas State. I was tempted to put them higher, but I just have to look at this team as a whole. And I mean, Kansas State was supposed to be really good last year, but a lot of the transfers they brought in just did not live up and they didn't mesh. And they got a lot of transfers again this year, except this time they kind of went for the big star in Memphis point guard PJ Haggerty, who averaged 21.7 points at Memphis, stud scorer. Nate Johnson from Akron they got as a defensive guard, which is good. But nothing else moves me, to be honest. Andre Kostic is a 4-star foreign forward from Germany. Interesting, but it'll be the PJ show. And because the pieces I just don't think are good enough. But is PJ good enough to carry them to a spot in the tournament? It's possible. I'm just not really betting on it, to be honest. So that's why I have them at 11. And I have West Virginia at 12. I think they are definitely a school that I'm going to be kind of intrigued with. I really don't think they're going to make the tournament, but they're not in that kind of like bad Big 12 team range at all. They are fully loaded with a lot of lower school transfers. I really would like to see how some of these guys translate. The one that I think will translate and I really like is Trayson Eaglestaff from North Dakota. He averaged 19 points a game there. He had a 40-point game versus Alabama, a 51-point game in conference play. He's 6'6". I think he could be like a poor man's Dalton Connect, like how he was 2 years ago at Tennessee. Chance Moore from St. Bonaventure played good versus good teams while he was at St. Bonaventure, so I think that kind of helps you feel a little bit better when you're bringing over lower school transfers. Honor Huff was super productive at Chattanooga. Some other guys are in there as well. It's just obviously the concern is how many of these guys can convert to big, consistent Power 5, Big 12 basketball. I think it could be enough to where they are for sure in this bubble range. I just don't know if it's going to be enough for them to for sure go on ahead and, make the NCAA tournament. And they're also in that kind of similar range of a new coach coming in, Ross Hodge from North Texas. He's won 80% of his games and is kind of deemed as a great defensive coach. So I think that also kind of helps their floor there. So that's why I have West Virginia in this range, but I do have them at 12. And then this final area is my try again next year tier. I do have 4 schools in this tier here, so we can run through them. One of them that, again, is kind of separated from the other 3, but I just have to have here because at some point I got to cut off of when I think teams could make the tournament. So it's not a bad team, but I just don't see them making it. That's UCF, Central Florida. Not a pushover, but just not enough. They are full of transfers. A lot having been younger guys who haven't really done much at their initial stops. Riley Kugel, a former top prospect from Florida, is intriguing. Devon Cambridge from Texas Tech played for a while, and he's pretty good. 2 players from Milwaukee who played together should be high floor defenders in Big 12 play. It's just the scoring might be really ugly from time to time for this team, so that's why I don't have them in that bubble range. Utah is at 14. They kind of start off this clear bottom 3 here. They hired an NBA guy in Alex Jensen. They're trying to be the next BYU, basically. We'll see how it goes. In terms of right now, I don't see much. Keanu Dawes is a returner who could be good. They got Auburn's best bench player, who was a freshman last year. Not best bench player, sorry. They got Auburn's, an Auburn bench player, who was a freshman last year, and Ja'Kai Howard, who had some good numbers, but there's not much outside out of that for Utah. Colorado, they're doing kind of a big young reset, not many transfers. They kept some guys, but none scored double digits last year, and they all kind of the team itself went 14-21. So didn't really keep any insane guys. Barrington Hargress had 20 points per game at UC Riverside, so that's a solid, lower school scorer. But it's definitely going to be a young reset. And then Arizona State, I have last at 16. Lots of lower school guys, none particularly crazy. Maurice Odom had 13 points and 7 assists at Pepperdine. He's going to be there. The head coach is very much on the hot seat and is just viewed in a very bad light. I just don't touch Arizona State. I would not touch them. I'm very much selling them. Probably the team I'm the most confident in saying that they will not succeed this year. But that is my Big 12 rankings. Let's go on ahead and let's go back through them really quick. In this try again next year tier, just not going to really be relevant in the bubble. Arizona State last at 16, Colorado at 15, Utah at 14, UCF at 13. In this bubbly / kind of outside looking in range, we have 4 teams: West Virginia at 12, Kansas State at 11, TCU at 10, and Oklahoma State at 9. Then we get to the tournament teams. These are teams that I think are on the edge, but I would definitely bet in making the tournament. That is going to be Cincinnati at number 8 and Baylor at 7. Next tier is teams that are definitely going to be tournament teams. I don't think they're going to contend for their conference, but for sure going to be in. That is going to be Arizona at 6, KU, Kansas at 5, and Iowa State at 4. And then the top 3, all 3 of these teams I think can definitely contend for their conference. Texas Tech at number 3, BYU at 2, and Houston at number 1. So I have 8 teams from the Big 12 in the NCAA tournament. I think 4 of them have a shot to make it. The thing with the Big 12 is while it seems like it might be a smaller amount, that 1 to 6 range from Houston to Arizona, maybe even including one of Baylor or Cincinnati if they get pretty hot, are going to be like in the top 20 for the AP poll. So this is definitely going to be a very high ceiling, top heavy kind of conference. Yet they still have teams in the middle that I could see making it or being able to be a good team compared to, all the other bubble teams that you got to compete with in other conferences like the, SEC and the Big Ten, who are the 2 kind of big ones, at least in terms of the amount of teams they have. But for what the Big 12 is historically, I think it's going to be another good year. You have teams at the top that can definitely contend. You have teams in the middle that some have a high floor like Iowa State. Some have a very high ceiling like Kansas and Arizona. I just think this is a really good conference to watch. So if you're a fan of this conference, go on ahead and enjoy it. But that is going to be my Big 12 preseason rankings. We'll obviously revisit all this stuff kind of when March comes along, and now I'll definitely be doing my studying behind the scenes. Don't worry about that. That's for sure. So all the kind of big videos we had last year, we're looking to make some even better ones. And as always, thank you for watching. Stay smart, stay sharp, and I will see you guys later. Peace.